to the Spicy Tech Podcast. It's been a very long time since we've been able to actually get an episode out there due to several scheduling issues. But hi, my name is Cirrus, and today I've got Biminem and Gale with me.
What's up?
And wait, why is okay? So I just realized something. We have Gale here and Biminem, but I don't think Biminem's reactive is actually working.
Oh,
he's just the dark red.
No, it's okay. I'm Antichrist mode. It's okay.
He's just the dark red, just stuck there, unable to move. That's so weird. Why is that doing that?
No, you know why? Look what you got in the portrait.
I think mine is also not working either. I think mine is just lit up.
You think yours is just lit up permanently?
Yeah, but it is what it is for this one. Well, technical issues.
Yeah, technical issues. What even are technical issues anymore? They're just the things we deal with permanently.
They're the friends we made along the way.
Apparently having the skin was a technical issue of my app park.
You're not allowed to have skin. What even is skin? I just reset both of y'all's things, and neither of them are working. That's great.
That's awesome.
That's great. We're just gonna cut off.
10 out of 10.
We're just gonna cut off your top there real quick. You don't need it. You're not using it for anything anymore.
Maybe use a different word than top.
God dang it. Anyways, today we wanted to talk about our overrated and underrated cards for Magic the Gathering, specifically for Commander, and generally speaking, this is for casual Commander, the Commander most people play, not the 15 people who complain online about CDH discourse. I'm not too worried about y'all. CDH is its own conversation, but seeing as I can't get the technical side of this to work for the first time in ever, I don't know why that's happening. Oh well. It's fine. Everything's broken. That's okay. Play card games. Screw you.
Good.
I'll accept that.
Good. I approve.
Serenity Silvermoon of the chat, you're not allowed to have skin, is the most Phyrexian phrase ever.
It's
I'm
true.
complete, guys.
We have a sleeper among us.
I'm in complete agreement.
I need you to shut up.
So it was funny when he said it.
Yes, it was funny when he said it, not when you said it.
Okay, I understand. I understand now. Well, okay, cool. I guess the overrated thing was the friendship anyway. Jesus Christ. Why is it? God, I don't know why it's not. I'm going to sit here and try to figure this out while we do this show. I will be figuring out technical stuff while at the same time handling all of everything else. This is going to be great. Oh, great. Anywho. So the idea here is cards that we think people either don't talk about enough or don't run enough because of what they do that's important. And then cards that when you're building a deck or when you are helping your friend build a deck, and for some reason you decide that this is the first card that comes to mind. Ignore the OBS browser source right there. It's not important. Ignore it. It's just not working. Anyway, if everything's gonna be busted, then it gets to be full busted, all busted, full send. You know what? Let's just for shits and giggles, I'm gonna send you both this link, and we're gonna see if y'all log into the link with your Discords, if it fixes it. I don't think it will. I think it's just gonna be broken. But anywho, since we're dealing with broken podcast bits, I think for the overrated, it's not that these cards are bad or that these cards shouldn't be ran. It's that these are the cards that are so overrepresented and oftentimes without very good reason, and yet people still latch onto them as if they are the second coming of Christ, basically. Anytime that you hear deck suggestions or in comment sections, you'll see these cards as opposed to something a little more unique. And that only matters, again, in casual Commander, because in competitive Commander and CDH, even when you're playing 60-card Magic the Gathering, a card isn't overrated in those playstyles or those formats Because if a card is the best thing at doing what it does, then it's just going to go into those decks. Because otherwise you end up failing in the tournaments you're playing in with them. So it's not to say those cards are bad, to head off the like 5 people that are going to pop in and go, well, I think this card you thought was overrated is actually really good. Yeah, no dip. No dip. But I think we'll start off with one of Gail's suggestions first, since they were the first one that I didn't realize everything was broken for, and I should have before this. So what's one of your first underrated cards we should talk about?
The first one I'm going to talk about is a card that I've been on a hunt for like 18 million copies of. It's going to be Aboleth Spawn.
Aboleth Spawn?
Aboleth Spawn.
All right,
Aboleth.
cool. So let's talk about this thing. What we got here?
Okay, so first of all, it's a fish. That's
Okay.
the first important part.
I'm very impressed now.
Okay, well, so it has Flash, it has War 2, and it copies ETBs of opponents' things. It's really fun because I play against a lot of Pet Laza things.
Yeah.
So
I wonder why you play against those decks.
well, probably I think the last 4 times I've played last 4 times I've played a deck that had Aboleth Spawn in it, and there was at least one Pet Laza at the table. And my favorite thing to do is when they cast Pet Laza is to respond by flashing in an Aboleth Spawn and getting a Discover for it. And then when they inevitably flip into that Wood Elf, I also get a Forest.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not
unless you're not playing Simic.
Unless I'm not playing Simic. But that's beside the point. There's a lot of just like, especially in casual, there's a lot of just like generic ETBs, like Solemn Simulacrum, the Elvish Visionaries, like the Reclamation Sages, the things that are just like, hey, I'm going to ETB and I'm going to blow that thing up. And I'm like, okay, I will also get to do that.
That's fair. If somebody pulls out like you have Aboleth Spawn out, or you flash it in when somebody decides it's time for them to go, hey, I'm playing Hostage Taker. You get to go, no, our Hostage Taker.
I think the best time was when I was playing my Flash deck, my Raspberry Flash deck, and somebody played a Bane of Progress.
Yeah.
So I was just like, no, my Bane of Progress, you get nothing.
You get to have a 2/2 forever.
So,
man, I wonder why there was an uptick in playing Bane of Progress at our locals. I wonder who might be responsible for that.
Yeah, I wonder.
I have no idea who could possibly be.
And then also, this is a certain person who tends to play a lot of artifact sets who really doesn't like the fact that there's a lot of Bane of Progress going around.
I have no idea who might be running an enchantment commander at our locals that needs to be answered with Bane of Progress.
Actually, multiple people.
but okay, so Aboleth Spawn sounds interesting, and I'm fairly certain that Biminem would also have that in one of his decks, actually.
Well, yes. Mm-hmm.
So it actually came in the pre-con. The Captain and Gathrod deck that is a pre-con. Can you pull Umbrus up real quick?
I can pull Umbrus
I think
up,
they've had enough
absolutely.
time to see Aboleth Spawn.
Yeah, I can pull that up real quick. What's up?
Yeah. Well, just to show them.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna do that, but it takes a few seconds for the hands and the keyboard to do the hands and keyboard thing.
Gratification.
And then you have to say words as I'm doing that.
So the captain, no, I have to have immediate. I have to have perfection.
Immediate gratification.
Where's my soy latte? Where's the pool boy to bring it to me? Anyway,
damn.
The Captain and Gathrod pre-con deck is like 95% of what you need to make this guy right here commander. You can just buy the pre-con and then just put Ingathrod in the 99 and put Umbrus at the driver's seat. And it comes with Aboleth Spawn in the deck in the pre-con. Also, Umbrus, I'm going to check his price real fast. He was
Umbrus
always
is $10.
sitting around. Okay, That's actually the lowest he's ever been. He's always been $15 to $20. So he's a good ass card, and people love him. And he's one of the easiest commander decks you can make because he just has a different deck that is ready to go.
He has
You
a
swap out,
precon
three
that he can
cards.
just be the shell for.
Exactly. But yeah, Aboleth Spawn and that thing is absolutely incredible because you're running blink effects and things like that as well.
Well, because you want to blink Umbris, you want to get the another
Well,
nightmare.
Well,
Yeah.
it's actually like specifically Atlas Spawn is good against blink decks, simply because it only works for your opponents, but it is just really good for somebody in I play against has a Delny deck.
Oh,
And
yeah.
They have it's just full of like 2-power ETBs. I'm like, yeah, you can have 2. I'll get 1. We can share. We can share.
I'm
I
fairly
like that.
certain
Yeah.
you can still abuse the Aboleth Spawn in Blink though, because there's a handful of Blink in both blue and white that targets any card on the board, because it's specifically the cards that are meant to take cards that have been stolen from you and blink them back to your side of the board.
You are
Uh-huh.
correct in that, but when I made that statement, I was actually thinking of Overcharged Amalgam.
Yes.
Because he has a very similar function to Aboleth Spawn. He is a flash me in creature, I'm going to do a thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also a horror, and he's in blue. And
So-
he comes in the precon with the Captain Gathrod as well.
Never forget that if you have that card and also an Eternal Witness on the board in Simic, if you have a Overcharged Amalgam in Simic, you can just cast any of the cards that blink 2 creatures and keep having a counterspell over and
Yep.
over and over like a degenerate.
And Overcharged Amalgam is the best counterspell. He says counter target spell, activated, or triggered ability.
Yep.
His
So-
no is rated E for everyone.
Although he doesn't he have a sacrifice trigger as well?
Yeah, it has to exploit.
Yeah, it has to exploit.
That's
But if you
fair.
have like tokens or you said you're
Himself?
blinking 2 creatures, you just kill a creature and get like the Ewit to bring it back or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you would use the Ewit to get back the blink spell. This
Well,
is
if you got
is the whole point.
that's what I'm saying. Like if you had somewhere, like if you were copying triggers or whatever, we're talking about various board states.
Yeah.
We're getting too much into the nitty gritty and the.
What even is Frilled Mystic anyway?
Shut up. Trying to threaten me with a bad time.
So context, during the last, it wasn't quite at the tournament time, but during our last time at locals, I couldn't assemble a winning board state in Galadriel, but I could assemble a kill me now or you'll never be able to play Magic the Gathering for the rest of the game board state. Where I used Elvish Mystic to tutor up a Frilled Mystic to the top of the deck.
Elvish Harbinger.
Elvish Harbinger to tutor up a Frilled Mystic to the top of the deck. Showed that I had the double blink spell in hand and just went, okay. So, either you kill me now, or I get to counter every spell you play for the rest of the game. The game either ends now because I'm tired of you playing Magic, or it ends now because you kill me. Take your pick.
And I prefer playing Magic, so.
So I died. I died very quickly. A Rise of the Dark Realms killed me. You wiped my board, and then Rise of the Dark Realms my board to your board. And
Rise of the Dark Realm's still a good card.
giving you a lot of elf ETBs turns out is not a way to win the game.
Hey, in my Mardu deck, I made 3 green mana, so.
All right, so Biminin, what was one of your underrated cards?
One of my underrated cards, and it actually wouldn't have popped to my head until recently. Ulvenwald Oddity.
Okay.
It's kind of less interactive, but it's just a strong body by itself. And then once you've actually flipped it, which you're in green, so the activated cost isn't terrible. That's a very powerful lording effect. And on an 8/8 Trample Haster.
It's one of the only 3 ways I can think of in mono green to lord haste onto a board.
See, and I think it's actually the best way to lord haste onto the board, in my opinion, because, well, uh like you have like Concordia Crossroads, but Concordia Crossroads is very
It gives it to everybody.
it gives it to everybody, and so if you don't win immediately, you're kind of
Would you
really in a
do you like it more than Crashing Drawbridge?
I do like it more than Trash and Drawbridge.
Interesting.
Because by itself, on just the front side, I think it's still like a 4/4 with trample and haste.
It's a 4/4 with trample and haste for 4.
I think that like by itself, it is I'd rather play 4 mana for a 4/4 than 2 mana for a 0/4, even though it is technically easier to use the Crash and Drawbridge because you don't have to pay, like 7 or 8 mana, whatever it is, to transform it. I like it more than Crash and Drawbridge.
And one thing I really like about it, because when a card comes out, it's released with other cards at the same time, and so we have to look at its balancing compared to the cards around it. Ulvenwald Oddity was released in a set plagued with Daybound, Nightbound, where sure you get a powerful effect on the ass side of the creature, but board state is going to keep flipping it back and forth. This dude just stays in this way. You don't lose him to the front side outside of someone blinking him.
No, that's fair. I can appreciate that.
I think the biggest part about Uvenwald Oddity / the Behemoth is that if you played multiple creatures, let's say you played an elf, you flipped this, you played like a Circle of Dreams Druids, and you needed a bunch of mana to do something else. With a Crashing Drawbridge, you'd have to activate it then, and then the thing that you played wouldn't have haste.
Okay,
because you already activated. This one just gives haste to everything at all times. So you can. What ends up happening for me when I play it is that I transform it, and then I play like 4 different things, use them all to cast the other things, and then I just have a billion dudes that are all tapped now.
And this also works if you're going to sit there blinking creatures, because Crashing Drawbridge just gives it to the creatures at that point. If you blink the creature, it loses haste. Ulvenwald just lords it out. Yeah, they just have it.
I also just recognized something. So apparently yesterday, Reactive added in a feature that if you mute your microphone or deafen yourself, it will paste this giant thing over your face that makes it look like you're actually, deafened or muted. But on a show like this, where you don't want a giant thing slapped over your face randomly, it's kind of stupid.
See, I'm so proactive about that.
Yours doesn't work at all.
Face off. I don't even have a face. I ripped my face off.
So that I couldn't put it up.
Exactly.
They can't do anything to it. I don't understand why it's there, because I didn't even notice it until I muted so I could cough. And then I went, oh, every time I mute so I can cough now, instead of just on the user side, people are going to see, oh, he's just not talking. Instead, it's going to be, nope, giant mute pasted on with Elmer's glue. Like, oh, okay, thanks. Was that the April Fool's thing that you guys uploaded? Discord Reactive Food Is that what you did? Because, don't.
That was a good one. I should have said double season as one of mine, but it is what it is.
I can, you know what? Actually, let's. I want to talk about my underrated, one of my underrateds real quick. But I think we can take a quick tangent to talk about doubling season. Not just doubling season, but every single one of these effects. Every one of the effects that is functionally, I create a super synergistic board state. By being on the board, I allow you to win harder and win more, but it doesn't actually get you there in any deck. There is no deck, in my opinion, where doubling season is the thing that gets you there outside of a Super Friends deck. Other than that, the thing that makes doubling season work is your deck was already on the path to do the thing it wanted to do in the first place. Your deck was already putting itself in a decent winning position. The turns that you basically lost by dropping a 5-mana spell that did nothing when you played it could have been better spent doing something else.
I can think of one exclusive exception to that. Otherwise, I agree.
Slime Against Humanity?
Slime Against Humanity.
So I'm gonna caveat this. I think that people who use Doubling Season for the counters is like besides Super Friends deck are wrong. They're just wrong.
Okay.
I think that like we can make an argument for like doubling tokens being really good. And so that's why I think that Parallel Lives, things like that, they're okay.
Making sure your board state has more blockers in it isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I think that the doubling tokens is fine. The doubling counters, like the people who put them in like I don't know, just freaking anybody who plays it in 1/1 counter. Like I can't even think of a 1/1 counter deck that actually uses this. So yeah, anybody puts in a 1/1 counter deck.
Hydras.
Well, yeah.
I would argue it's not even necessary in Hydras because like
no, that's what we're saying.
So like so I have a Zoxara deck, and in the situations where I'm able to double the counters on my Hydra, it's taking a 10-10 or a 12-12 and turning it into a 24-24, 20-20. It's making it bigger, but those Hydras don't get trampled on their own. You have to give them another card to give them trample to begin with. So ultimately, what's the difference between chump blocking a 12-12 and chump blocking a 24-24? In 99% of scenarios, it's the same thing.
So both by creature typing Hydra, because there are a couple Hydras that do this, but I also just mean the layman's term Hydra for anything that has X in the cost for the 1/1s.
Yeah.
You do get creatures that have ETB based on their power toughness. Like they have an ETB effect that gives you something based on their power toughness. That would be a time where you directly get benefit from the doubling season because, now the creature is out bigger. The ETB effect, that trigger that came off the ETB is now bigger.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to research this, and I might be saying a wrong thing. I think there might be 1 or 2 trampling Hydras that when you dip into red.
There's several trampling.
Well, yeah, red was the original Hydra color.
So the thing about doubling season is that, like, for specifically the counters, is that the counters themselves don't do anything. They don't like Sarah said, making a thing bigger just to make it bigger doesn't do anything.
No, it doesn't.
It is when you add it's when you add more things that the making it bigger actually becomes an effect, and by that point you might as well have just played 2 things.
Yeah, like what I was. So I say this because as I was testing out my Zoxara deck, I have a $15 Zoxara deck that I built on the channel months ago, and I have the physical version of it, and I was playing it at our locals on Saturday. And when I was playing my game with Zoxara, I got one of my counter doublers on the board. While I had a bunch of creatures on the board, but the big one is I had a 10-10 Hydra, and I doubled it to a 20-20. And swung it at a person, and it got Deadly Rollicked. Now, if I swing a 10-10 Hydra at you, that's probably also getting Deadly Rollicked. Like, you're probably, if you don't have a chump blocker available, and the person did not have a chump blocker available at the time, if you don't have a chump blocker available, and I swing a 10-10 Hydra at you, you're probably hitting it with Path to Exile. You're probably hitting it with Deadly Rollick. You're probably taking it off the board. Making it a 20-20 didn't make you take it off the board faster. You already had 1 or 2 Hydras swinging at you for basically half your life total. You were taking care of them. And in this situation, 2 of my Hydras were taken care of at instant speed. That was going to happen either way. The doubling of the counters didn't change that situation, and it didn't make it more advantageous for me. What would have made it more advantageous for me was giving those Hydras that were already big trample, so that they could break parity, which is a video that I need to make, and we need to do a topic on how to break parity in games, because I think people get into those battle cruiser games a lot where like everybody's got a bunch of cards and nobody knows how to progress the game. And like trample is a way to break parity. It is an easy way to break parity. Oh, you've got a billion blockers? That's fine. Block it with all of them now. Like, that will eat a board state away. That will break parity. Flying breaks parity. Skulk, all that kind of like unblockable stuff. Death Touch and Trample together easily break parity.
Nasty.
Yeah.
I love that pair.
Any of that stuff forces your opponent to go, oh, I can't just absorb this with 1/1 tokens I've shat out of my Planeswalker.
But I realize why I've had a different perspective on this, because I do agree the counters matter less on doubling season than the token thing. But I keep forgetting that my Hydra commander specifically is Magus Lucia Kane, and Magus Lucia Kane does both of these paragraphs simultaneously.
Right. So
because she copies the Hydra coming in. At that point, paying the 1 extra mana for doubling season over Parallel Lives also makes sense, because then I get more counters on that extra token as well. And I do run both in the deck.
Yeah, yep. and Magus Lucia Kane, it matters more for than, say, Zoxara, because Magus Lucia Kane gets to make copies of cards specifically, which has more utility than I make more of the big thing that's already big, and I just make more of it.
Time out.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Bim and them.
Yeah.
If you have a Magus Lucia Kane, can you bring up Magus Lucia Kane, please?
Okay.
I'll bring up Lucia Kane, sure.
Okay. If you have a Magus Lucia Kane and you have a doubling season, right? And you cast, let's just say any normal Hydra for X = 4. How many Hydras do you get? And what are their sizes?
Let's see.
This is a quiz.
Am I doing and I've tapped Magus, so Magus's abilities on the stack?
Yep.
All right. Pull up Magus for my own knowledge real quick.
It is up.
Tap, add double colorless when you next cast a spell with X in its mana cost, or activate an ability with X in its activation cost this turn. Copy that spell or ability. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Just a random Hydra. It'll come in X = 4, so it'll come in with 4 counters normally.
Okay. And doubling season is out?
Yep.
Let's see.
It's really simple.
Would I make 2 8/8s?
You would get a total of 2 8/8s. The original one and the copy. That is it.
That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here's the question now. Why is Parallel Lives in that deck?
Well, actually, I'm saying I run Parallel Lives. I don't actually remember.
I'm pretty sure we had this conversation last time. I mean, you took it out because of that.
Yeah, it's probably out of the deck. You're probably right.
Okay.
It's probably out of the deck.
Anyways, moving on. All right. Sir, you're underrated card.
I was just going to say it's that Magus Lucia Kane can't actually see anything with doubling season because she's not making tokens. She's copying a spell on the stack.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I haven't played the deck in a hot minute. Yeah,
you have not.
That's corrected. I was going back to my original deck building logic of making it.
Yeah, with like Zoxara makes tokens on the stack, and the replacement effect of doubling season will benefit from it. But then we fall back into, I've already made 2 or 3 10/10 Hydras. How much more do I desperately need?
Yeah.
But okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say my first one. Nobody's gonna have any. Nobody's gonna look at this and go, "Oh, that's weird." It's Honored Heirloom.
Wait, actually, I have a question because I'm sitting here looking at the Magus you got put up on the screen.
Go ahead.
It says copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. And Parallel Lives and doubling season both say if you would create a token, you create.
So stop right there. Here's the thing: you're not creating a token when you copy a spell. It becomes a token.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, doubling season and Parallel Lives are replacement effects. So they must see the exact thing that they are worded as on the stack, and it's not.
Correct.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then.
So mine is going to be Honored Heirloom, and this is a general stand-in for all easy access graveyard removal, because I've seen on like Channel Fireball, MTG Goldfish, I've seen some of the conversations they're leaning towards even removing Bojuka Bog out of decks now, so that they can have more optimal, tapped mana bases or untapped mana bases. And I also see people moving away from things like, people never moved in the direction of Honored Heirloom. I saw this card. I bought 20 of them off TCG Player for like a penny each. I got excited, and nobody else got excited with me, and it felt weird. But, but
Yeah, that was a weird Thursday.
it was a weird Thursday. But there hasn't been a single game that I've dropped an Honored Heirloom on the board or stolen an Honored Heirloom from somebody else with one of my effects where it hasn't made me feel good about it being on the board. Either it's
made me feel mad about it being on the board.
It has made you feel mad about it. You were playing Reanimator when I stole Saki's Honored Heirloom with my Atali. And then I got to sit on just a mana rock that says, the reanimation player doesn't get to play Magic the Gathering anymore. So I've noticed that people like move away from these kinds of graveyard removals because they'll go, oh, well, there's a better card in the 99 that can get rid of graveyards. So why would I want it on my mana rock? Why would I want it on my land? And my argument for these is always going to be they occupy a slot that gets to be flexible without taking away from that slot. So like if I put in a creature, let's say I put in a Scavenging Ooze, right? And I put that in my deck. The Scavenging Ooze is better at answering graveyards than Honored Heirloom. This is indisputable. But the Scavenging Ooze is taking up a creature spot that could be something else. The Honored Heirloom taking up a ramp slot, a mana rock slot. What's the functional difference between an Honored Heirloom and a Command Sphere? It's the utility on the second half of the card. That's it. You already were going to have 10 to 13 mana rocks in your deck anyway, if you're building your mana correctly to begin with. Same thing with Bojuka Bog. You were already putting lands in your deck anyway. Taking out a swamp for a Bojuka Bog is super simple. Taking out a otherwise basic mana rock. Like, let's say you have a bunch of talismans, a bunch of signets, and then you have an Ornithopter of Paradise. Well, there's one of these that's the odd man out. The Ornithopter of Paradise, being a card that doesn't get to tap for mana the turn it comes out, is just as slow as a 3-mana mana rock that gets to tap for mana the turn it comes out in most situations. Outside of, like, you have a 3-cost commander, and you need specifically not to cast Honored Heirloom on turn 3 because your commander needs to come out. In all those... oh, go on, sorry.
It's better for 4-cost commanders, specifically.
I'd say it's good for 4-cost and 2-cost commanders.
Well, so, no, I'm talking about for Ornithopter of Paradise. Okay. I'm saying that Ornithopter of Paradise is only better if the commander costs exactly 4 mana.
Because otherwise you were getting that 3rd mana anyway on turn 3.
Correct.
That's fair. So to my argument with this is always going to be you need utility for getting rid of every type of thing in Magic when you're building your deck. If you don't put that in and you put it on the other players to have the responsibility to take care of those cards, like I don't put graveyard removal in my deck because I have 1 brain cell. So I rely on somebody else who I hope is playing black to play their 1 token copy of Bojuka Bog. It feels like bad deck design. Whereas cards like Honored Heirloom, for the low price of 8 cents, gives you a card that gets rid of one of the most commonly played archetypes in the game. It gives you a tool against one of those commonly played archetypes in the game, and it costs you nothing. It costs you nothing in your deck building. It's a mana rock you were already putting in. It costs you nothing monetarily. It costs 8 cents. It's 1/3 of a stick of bubblegum. Like,
I know a way to sell graveyard removal to the Timmies out there. Can you please bring up Release to Memory?
Oh my god, no.
Sure thing. One sec.
I can make it fit their flavor. I got you.
While you're doing that, I will say this. Honored Heirloom has the added utility of just people who play incidental things from their graveyard. Like, they're just like, oh, I'm just going to play Eternal Witness. We're going to get back something.
And you just go, no, you don't. My mana rock says no.
Thing. Look at that thing. It's an instant. It's only in 1 color. It hits the whole graveyard. It gets you a token creature for every creature card. It's a good boy. It's doing its best.
Mm-hmm.
It is great graveyard removal, and even the one brain cell Timmy's out there, like you said, they can run this because it is interaction and it advances your board state as well.
It's token creation if you're playing a go wide deck or an aristocrats deck that wants tokens for fuel.
Or any white deck that just needs to get rid of a graveyard.
A vehicle deck.
Also,
this is pilots.
Specifically in aristocrats, it is aristocrats, anti-aristocrats. So it is I'm the only one that gets to be an aristocrat at the table because I'm going to blow up your graveyard and I'm going to do aristocrats things with it. It helps prevent the annoying goaded time in the round standoff that is two aristocrats players at the same deck. I mean, at the same table.
Yep. When you get to go, especially because one of the ways that standoff happens, because I've seen it happen a lot, is
with you and I. Specifically, you and I as individuals.
You and I specifically, but so I have noticed that since we have been playing our Aristocrats decks at locals, more Aristocrats players have popped up.
Christ, how many Elos core decks have I acquired?
There's a few of them, and there's one guy who's building a Savr deck based off my $15 version, and there are more players who are playing that archetype now that they've dealt with us playing that archetype.
Yeah. It's fun.
And it's a very fun archetype, and it's a very new person friendly archetype too, because you get to affect the board state while playing internally.
I think they're getting tired of losing to me having only 2 lands all game and me still winning.
Because Aristocrats doesn't need more than a couple lands.
And that's a bit of a tie back into what you were saying about the Bajuka Bog coming in tapped and needing to make your mana base efficient and untapped. You know what makes you not have to care about all your lands coming in tapped?
Lower your CMC of your deck.
Curve.
Yeah, lower the curve of your deck.
If your deck is a low enough curve, you can run Bajuka Bog, you can run Mortuary Mire, you can run all the things that come in tapped, and it be okay.
There's a YouTuber who I'm doing a collaboration with soon, Angry Green Jellybean, and they have a wonderful guide, and it's based off of the precons that Wizards has made, but it's a guide for slots for deck building, and it's not just the slots, it's also things like building a deck in easy mode is getting these slots correct. Building a deck in medium difficulty is getting these slots correct and doing it within this certain budget. Building a deck on hard difficulty is doing all these things and making sure you have a mana curve under this particular number. And it's that way for all decks, because even if you're playing a ridiculous like Reanimator deck where a lot of your cards cost a bunch, Reanimate spells cost 1 and 2. Your overall mana curve, the average mana curve, should still be decently usable. Most of your ways you have to discard those cards are 1 and 2 cards anyway. So you don't need... You simultaneously should not be running bad tapped lands like temples, but you also don't need every land to be a race car if your deck's curve is reasonable.
If you're going to run a tapped land, it needs to be a damn good one. We have reached 2024 with an obnoxious amount of product flooding and power creep. There are some really strong tap lands out there, so to just discredit them because they're tap lands is a bad idea. But if you're going to put a tap land, it better have a good function.
It's almost like I did a series of videos on improving your mana base, and there's a 460 card organized list of good lands that you can play in Commander, organized by color, type, and utility, available on this channel on any of the videos. What's up?
Wait, are we shilling?
Am I shilling for myself on this channel? On the Yes, absolutely, 110%.
Okay,
110%. It is almost as if there is a video on this channel going over this.
Oh, sweet. Then follow me on Feet Finder.
Only friends.
Only friends. All
right. So what about an overrated card? What's something that we think that that people are taking the advice on a little too much, and it's causing people to have some derpy games as a result? We'll start with Gale again.
Me? Oh boy. Oh boy. Let's just do this. Let's rip the
Yeah,
band-aid
rip
off.
the Band-Aid off. Do it.
All right. So my choice is actually specifically rampant growth.
I already want to throw hands with you on this one,
You can
but
throw
let's go.
hands. I gave you my promo rampant growth for a reason.
No, I'm with Gail on this one because I was actually in a conversation with someone earlier about it, but I'll let Gail.
Yeah,
Go first.
do your
So-
thing. Do your thing.
So my opinion on rampant growth is that number one, if you're in like it's the worst out of these effects. So 3 visits, nature's
It
lore,
really is.
all of that stuff. Now, as you get more colors, you start to get less. You start to need your basic, like specifically basic lands coming in tapped less. So, like, if I were to say, like, I have a 3-color, I have a Sultai deck. All right, I played like maybe 3 basics in the deck because I had a bunch of utility lands that I was trying to use. So as I started to go towards more utility lands and put all of my a lot of utility in the land slot, I started to cut out a lot of my basic lands. And so because I started to cut out my basic lands, Rampant Growth just kind of sat there as like half the time it was a dead card because I could never I would draw it and I'd look at my land base and I see 2 of the basic lands here and it doesn't get the color that I need because I don't have that many basics. So I was like, I'm just gonna cut it for something else. And then I started playing Simic decks, which is just 2 colors now. And I'm like, well, Rampant Growth doesn't really help me. It helps me ramp, sure, but I have so many other ways to do it that I don't need rampant growth specifically. I can use other ways to ramp that have more of an impact than a rampant growth.
So, okay, if I can hit 10, very, very easy and better than rampant growth for various reasons, effects in a deck, then that would be enough to not run it. We're not counting Arcane Signet and Soul Ring, because I think rampant growth is usually going to be better than the Signet.
Usually you run it alongside, but I just think that in a way that there's a lot of ways to find more synergistic ramp uses than a rampant growth.
So
is my opinion.
In terms of forest fetch, and this is pre-turn for forest fetch. So
it's specifically forest, not basic.
Yeah. I mean it could be basic fetch too, because I like Search for Tomorrow more than rampant growth. Because I can play Search for Tomorrow on a turn that is 90% of the time a dead turn. And then it gives me the land untapped, which means there's no difference in terms of mana spent between casting a Rampant Growth and having 3 tapped lands, or casting a Search for Tomorrow and having 3 tapped lands. There's no difference between those two to me. So I will say I would rather use Search for Tomorrow than Rampant Growth. But, okay, so we got Nature's Lore 3 visits and Farseek as our basic forest and non-forest fetch. Wood Elves as 3 mana forest fetch that for decks that care about creatures and blinking.
Yeah, Wood Elves and Farhaven Elf.
Farhaven Elf for the blinking decks too. Decks that care about creatures and blinking can use Farhaven Elf. Cultivate, Kadama's Reach. And then of course we have new Cultivate coming out in Modern Horizons 3.
And and then you have
and then you got Mana Dorks as well, and you've got Wild Growth and Utopia Sprawl are also I guess I can see cutting Rampant Growth, because as I'm naming stuff, I'm rampant the utility of Utopia Sprawl, Wild Growth, and Search for Tomorrow is the ability to play them on a turn you otherwise would not be playing anything. The utility of the Mana Dorks is again the ability to play them on a turn you otherwise wouldn't be doing anything. And then when I think of the amount of times where I've ramped on a turn and then missed a land drop afterwards, it made me appreciate Cultivate more. That's fair.
Yeah. So the whole Rampant Growth is still a card that I would put in a lot of decks, but when you start if you start using utility lands more, it's especially in decks where you're just hey, I have all of these things that I can put into my land base, that I'm I don't think that rampant growth makes the cut a lot of the time.
If you're using a lot of those utility lands, would you say that the rampant growth spot would be better taken up by a Sylvan Scrying or a crop rotation?
I would say yes, especially crop rotation. I would probably put it in like I would actually replace it with an Archdruid's Charm.
Okay.
Or
Because,
analyze the pollen.
Or what?
Analyze the pollen.
That puts in your hand. It's not really a ramp card.
Well, yeah,
so that's why,
Sylvan Scrying is also not a ramp card.
yeah, that's why I said I would put Archdruid's Charm in specifically because it's a ramp card if you get a land.
That's fair. I guess
Charm is nasty good.
I guess if the argument is rampant growth goes at about 70 miles an hour, which is good, but the other cards go at about 75 miles an hour.
Correct.
Which is just a smidge better. I can understand that with one exception. If my commander costs 3.
I think it's another case of the commander costing 4.
I think it's 3. I think it's 3 as well, because if the commander costs 4, most of the time I kind of want my turn 3 to be a better setup play than a ramp play. A lot of times my turn 3 is going to be
No.
Yeah, Gail's right.
Oh, okay.
No, the reason why you want a 4 because if you play rampant growth on turn 2, you play a land on turn 3, you will have 4 mana to cast a commander on turn 3 instead of turn 4. That's why it's specifically better on 4 mana commanders than 3.
Okay.
For you to get this off on to be turn ahead for a 3-drop commander, you had to do a turn 1 ramp and then this.
That's fair. That's fair.
If you're doing something degenerate like
Soul Ring.
So, we don't talk about that. Not in this household. But there are like decks that specifically care about a certain type of land. Like when Karametra, I think, is a deck that really likes rampant growth because they want to do is get up to 5 mana, and they care about how many planes they have because they usually play Emeria. So being able to play a ramp spell that gets you a plane specifically
is kind of important.
And gets you towards, it's really important.
That's fair.
For the effect of Emeria, any of those forest grabs are equally strong.
Yes, that is true.
Because they can grab a Canopy Vista.
Yep.
Yeah, that is true. That is very true. It's just like she also plays rampant growth, so she needs a critical mass of those effects.
Yeah, when I was playing Shanna, one of the other $15 decks that I built, I really enjoyed having access to these kinds of effects, like as many as possible. Because one, it was a budget deck, so every kind of that effect you could find for like under 15 cents was really important. And two, Emeria Shepherd is just so good.
Yeah.
Emeria Shepherd is just so good.
In the budget deck, this is way better than all of them because it costs nothing.
Yeah, like it's one of those cards that you spend a quarter on and you get hundreds of dollars of value out of.
Yeah.
Okay, so Biminem, overrated card. What would you throw in here?
So this one might ruffle some feathers, but Chaos Warp.
I'm gonna throw hands at you for this one, but yeah, I've been in the situations where this has lost me the game.
So, and I'm gonna tell you why. Chaos Warp only works against bad players. If you are building a deck well, you own redundancy in that deck of any effect you're running. And if you Chaos Warp someone's thing, you run a chance you hit their redundancy of that effect again. And if it was an ETB or something like that, now you've made it worse for yourself. Or you've hit some kind of other strong effect they have. The Chaos Warp becomes a diminishing value the better your opponent builds their deck.
With one exception, if they're playing a Spellslinger deck, the Chaos Warp has more dead targets in the deck than good targets.
Yeah. So the Chaos Warp, it's just like so it's whenever you start playing we play competitive formats. So one of the things we know is that we don't want any kind of variance in in what we're trying to do. Because if we add in variance, then there's a chance that we just lose the game off of losing like a 25% chance of them to hit the card that they need, right? Which is why we don't play. We try not to play things like well, we don't talk about triple trick.
Think about every time your opponent has cast a Transmogrify in Pioneer. Do you want to give them a Transmogrify? Like,
yeah,
I can,
exactly.
So I can get that. Now, granted, the variance is higher in Commander, and an argument can be made that there is a middle ground between consistency and variance in Commander that people try to hit because it creates a flavor of game that feels very kitchen toppy, that is fun. And I will say that while Chaos Warp has won me a fair few games, it has probably lost me more games than it's won me. That could also be my bias of concentrating on the losses more than the wins, but that's not important. The Chaos Warp has very often handed my opponent some dumb fuck Eldrazi.
So
I'm just like, oh, okay, there you go.
The better your opponent builds their deck, the better you're handing them a free card off the top. Lurking Predators is considered to be a very powerful card. You're giving your opponent a one-time Lurking Predator.
Yep. But also, when you like one of the real only places I would put a Chaos Warp is in a mono red deck, because you need to be able to remove things. You sure you have your liquid metal coating plus any artifact removal. That does work, right?
Yeah.
But you need more of them. Because then you have those people who are just like, I'm gonna hide behind my enchantments. And you're like, well, I didn't draw my liquid metal coating or my liquid metal torque.
It's the same reason that I make people play like Baleful Beholder and heavy black decks. Like, just be able to remove the thing your deck sucks at removing, please.
Yeah, that's why before all of this like colorless like removal, one of the things I used to play in my mono green decks was Scour from Existence, which is 7 mana, exile a permanent.
I think that wasn't that in that and one other type of card like that was in, I believe, the Freya precon when that came out.
I'm not sure, but it is a thing that I played because I needed to remove the issue. If there was an issue, I needed to be able to remove it. So I started playing it, because I've been mono green. I'm like, 7 mana is not an issue. I just need to get rid of the issue. So being able to remove a thing is important. And that's probably the only time I'll ever play Chaos War.
That's fair. I could appreciate that. I won't fight Biminem over something that they're right about. But I'm also not taking Chaos Warp out of my decks that I have it in.
Oh Lord.
Look, I have Chaos Warp in Nira, okay?
You know what? That I can appreciate that.
Think
I'll
Chaos
take 3
Warp
wins
stays
when
in.
they're handed to me.
I think Chaos Warp stays in Nira because it wants to go, well, I'm out of options. Chaos Warp Nira. Let's see what happens.
Now, also, you just pointed out one of my biggest gripes about Chaos Warp. Please tell the class what happens when you Chaos Warp an opponent's commander.
They still get
the Chaos Warp. They
but
still get the free
goes back to the commander goes back to the command zone.
Yeah, it goes back to the command zone.
And then they just get a free card off the top.
Yeah, and then they cast
That's
it
the worst
again.
commander removal in the game.
It is. It actually. Just if you're gonna do that, just play leadership.
And I've seen how many. You probably both have seen some noob Chaos Warp someone's commander like a dozen times before. And you're like, realize what you've just done.
Yeah, so I'll say this. I think the decks that care about Chaos Warp the most are decks that like red black. Red black still wants Chaos Warp because black suffers at enchantment and artifact removal, and red suffers at enchantment removal. So even in red black, you're wanting for ways to get rid of enchantments. But once you are in any other color combination, white can kill enchantments and artifacts just fine. Green can kill them both just fine. And blue has the ability of counter spells and bouncing. So blue has access to omni removal of a kind. So I can understand Chaos Warp being ran in less of those decks, unless you are in a very specific scenario where you need specifically Omni removal all the time. Like, I have Chaos Warp and Pantlaza because I also have Stroke of Midnight, Generous Gift, Beast Within, and when Pantlaza's flipping a card off the top, I can't get a situational Abrade. When there's not an Abrade target on the board, I need the removal to always work, even if there's a small backfire effect. So, like, there's situations where I think that it's still applicable, even outside of, like, funny haha chaos decks or decks that otherwise can't get rid of those card types. I still think there's applications for Chaos Warp.
Oh, I agree. I just think that it shouldn't be in like the amount of decks that it is in right now, just because it ends up losing people more games. Like,
Is it also that, like, players are very bad at recognizing what lost them a game?
Yes.
Because I have noticed that a lot in games where a player will look at a board state, and Biminem, you've seen this happen, where me and a player will both look at the board state. The player will go, I'm just gonna end. I'm not doing well. And I'll look at everything that's on the board and go, but you're in the dominant position. You're the one that's currently winning. Like, if you just read the cardboard on the table, you're in the position to take over completely. And the person will go, no, I've only got like one card on the board and I've got no cards in hand. I'm like, yeah, but the one card you have on the board is a card that lets you reuse removal from your graveyard, and we're all top decking.
Well, we know we know too many players that make Commander an emotional game. So
yeah,
I love Commander as a social game. I'm all about a social game. I do not think it should be an emotional game. They'll be like, oh, I'm not doing anything, so I'm not even going to bother doing this thing on my turn. I'm just going to pass. Like, they're choosing not to advance what little things they do have access to because of emotional state, because they feel like they're behind. Someone who's interpreting board state bad thinks they're in a bad spot, lets that emotion affect them, and then
they go on tilt.
Do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, they'll go on tilt because they think that the game is in an unwinnable state. And I guess that's also, like, I need to do a video on that too, about, like, is the game of Commander, when you're going into casual Commander, not CDH, and even in CDH there's an argument for this too, because it's the same argument that you would have in 60-card Magic. Are you going into this game because you enjoy the game? Or are you going into this game because you enjoy winning? There's nothing wrong with enjoying winning. That there's going to have to be a winner at the end of the game. But if you put emotional investment in winning that game, even at CDH, even at Pioneer, at Modern, in Standard, if you put emotional investment in winning, you will almost 100% of the time be blinded to whatever mistakes you make during your game.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's more of a, like, I have encountered not the emotional thing, but people who try to make it a comedy thing, where they're like, oh, this thing is funny, so I'm going to do this.
It's funny again when I control everybody and nobody gets to play Magic. It's funny when Torpor Orb is on the board. See,
it's more the fact that, I'm going to give an example, right?
Okay.
There's Liesa, Shroud of Dust, the commander that says, whenever a player plays a spell, that player loses 2 life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was playing against that deck with my Flash deck, and so they played their commander. It got killed. They played it again, right? They paid 2 life. They played it again. This time I made a copy of it, right?
Okay.
So my copy is a token, not my commander. It's a token. So instead of removing the token copy of it, they removed the commander 2 more times. And then they lost the game because they were like, oh, it was funny to kill his commander, and I still had a copy of it, so they're paying 4 life for each spell that they cast. And then they lost because I had a 5/5 flyer in the air with lifelink and could cast spells.
So instead of getting rid of the thing that they could permanently remove, they got rid of the recurable version of it.
Yes.
But no, I do see Superstar saying CEDH has a lot less emotion going into the game compared to normal EDH. I disagree. I disagree. There is a lot less rule. There is a lot less pre-game emotion going into a CEDH game. But I've seen CEDH players give just as much of a rat's ass about the amount of games they win or lose and how it happens as at regular commander tables. But there's not as much pre-game bullshit. Like the CEDH player doesn't get angry that a mana crypt came on the board, but I have seen them get very angry when they try to go for their win and a person stifles it, and then somebody else wins, and they're like, well, you should have let me win. I deserved that. Why did you stifle me and not the other guy? It's like, well, because you casted yours first.
Well, but by the same merit, they get CDH people actually get more emotional, in my opinion, because they're actually very elitist. You and I have seen it in firsthand
You've
perspective.
played more CEDH games than I have too, so
But
I'll
you've-
defer to
you've-
yours.
You still witness these people, and Gail can confer this. If you run any non-meta card, if you run something that they're fragilely assembled straight shot bullet to try to get to the end zone first deck doesn't anticipate, they get very salty.
I
They
have
get
seen
very-
that.
I have
Oh.
I have blasphemous acted
Oh
at
my!
many
I was gonna.
CEDH tables before, and many of them get pissed as hell.
I was actually gonna bring that specific card up because, like, actually,
They're like, how dare you not subscribe to the gentleman's agreement that you can only use this exact list of cards and
Yeah.
build these exact lists? And I'm over here. So for the audience that doesn't know, I have a CEDH deck,
You have two of
and
them.
it is a Voltron deck. I built Earl the Miststalker CEDH. It has Lion's Eye Diamond. It has every dual land in it. It's a $5,000+ deck, but it is a Enchantress Voltron Naya deck. I get a big Stompy Boy out on turn 1 or 2, and I beat the pants off the other CDH players before they
Yep.
can do their combos.
Yep.
They get salty as hell at me for it because it works.
I had that happen with Savra too. Like so before I built my CEDH deck, which is Shalai and Halar, the deck that I would bring to CEDH tables if it was the only thing available was Savra. Because if you cannot beat the CEDH player quick enough, you stacks them out of the game. So, fun thing about a lot of CEDH decks, if you're playing a Heliod deck, a Shalai Halar deck, any of those decks that, or a Dina deck, any of the decks that say, my commander has to be on the board for me to win the game. Savra's a really funny commander. She doesn't let you keep it on the board. She lets you look at your commander for a longing split second.
Also, actually, most of the CEH decks are just like, "Hey, I'll use my commander for this thing," and Savage just looks at it and says, "Put it back.
No, you won't.
Put it back. Put it back."
I watched. I got to play Savra in the tournament because one of the players said that they wanted me to play Savra, so their commander costed 12 by the time the game was over. The God Mole, Savra does not care about the God Mole. Savra looks at the God Mole and says, "That's cute.
Put it back."
put it back." So like I have seen that as well, and to be fair, that's not just a CDH thing. That is a thing I have noticed from every single competitive card game player in every card game I've played and I've done competitive stuff with.
Oh no, yeah,
I
you're
agree.
the authority
I
on
agree.
that.
I've seen it happen in Yu-Gi-Oh! When I would play stun decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! When they were off meta, and people would get upset that the stun deck was stopping them. I've seen it happen in Magic when I would play, Golgari Rock and Pioneer and answer damn near every card a person played before Golgari Rock had enough cards to actually be considered, upper tier 2. I saw it happen in Modern when I played Affinity. If I neoformed a creature in my Affinity deck and got out the Archon of Cruelty, the person would be salty because they're like, that's not the meta. That's not how that's supposed to work. I'm like, I don't care. Archon of Cruelty, go burr.
My modern deck has been the same for 2.5 years, and
Yep.
it just now became meta. And I've had plenty of salty people being mad when Domain Zoo beat their pants off even before it was a meta thing. I've been running it for 2.5 years.
Do you
And
remember?
my Pioneer deck, my Thing in the Ice Pioneer deck stomps faces and and I've had some people get salty about that. They're like, I hate it because they're like, it's bullshit. I can't target your thing. I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point of my deck.
That's the build of the deck. Or like when
Yeah,
I played,
I want you to steer that man and try to kill my thing, just for me to tell you no.
back when I was playing Mutate Bogles in Modern. Do you remember we had an Omnath player in 5-color Omnath Landfall with all of the Evoke elementals. There was a player in our play group who played that. And it's a very strong deck. It's been a meta deck in Modern for a while, for a reason. Like, it's a good deck. Having access to all the Evoke elementals and being able to play them all for free and also keep them on the board forever, and have, like, life gain engine and all kinds of shit. Like, Omnath is a strong Modern deck. Funny thing about Fury and Solitude, Bogles don't give a crap about those cards. They are expensive paperweights when looking at a Bogle. And Omnath doesn't have room to run a Shadow Spear to turn a Bogle off. So this exact thing happened. It was years ago. We were playing with a person who used to be in our play group. And what we used to do is we would all bust out our Modern decks and we would play in rotation. So we'd do a few games, siding and not siding, usually just not siding because your game one is important. We would practice a bunch of Modern games against each other, and then after 3 or 4 rounds, we would stand up and musical chairs around, get different opponents, and try again. And because of this kind of practice, lo and behold, we almost always got top spots when we had Modern tournaments in the area, because we had a very good practice structure, and we had, just at the time, I think we actually had every deck in the meta represented in our pod.
Wait, you're talking about us?
Yeah, I'm talking about us.
I thought you were talking about a different playground. I'm like,
no, this is our play group. Years ago, when we had our Modern play group, when we did our Modern practice sessions, and we had a player in that play group when I played Bogles and they played Omnath, who got super upset. And the reason they got upset about losing to Bogles when we would practice is, I'm not going to see this in the tournament. Boy, howdy, you will if you're against me.
We would go to the tournament as a group. We would all show up together, and we'd end up fighting each other.
Like,
yes, objectively, you knew you had guaranteed information that you would see Bogle for the tournament.
You knew you would deal with the Bogle. Remember, I specifically built 2 different sideboards, because I knew that the worst matchup at the time for my Bogles deck, I had 2, were Izzet Storm and Death Shadow. I struggled against Death Shadow, and I don't even remember why, but I decided that the way to beat Death Shadow was to be aggro. So my Izzet Bogles deck, which was a mutate deck, the entire point was get a Bogle on the board, use a Lightning Bolt or a counter spell to keep your opponent set back, killing a Ragavan, killing a Darcy, and then after you destabilized them, you would put Lord Dracus on top of your Bogle. Your Bogle's still not targetable, and you'd get back your Counterspell, or your Unholy Heat, or your Lightning Bolt, and you would keep that game state that way, and you would chip your opponent down 2 to 3 health at a time, while just keeping a hand filled with Counterspells and removal, and there would be basically no way for them to deal with it. Like, once Bogles got established, outside of an Edict effect, the Bogles did not get dethroned at that point. It took a second to get set up, and I had to have specific cards to deal with, like Bimminum Zoo deck. I had to put I had to put Porcupine in my deck for Zoo, okay?
Hey now. Supreme Verdict also goes burr.
Okay, so your control deck had Supreme Verdict, but yes, we all found ways to counter each other's decks, and we brought them to the tournament because we know we'd be fighting each other.
It was literally just like an insular. It's like we all just like, okay, what's the meta like? We just looked at each other and we're like, oh, okay, that's the meta.
So,
speaking of Supreme Verdict, though, I have a follow-up topic after this.
Okay, so I have seen competitive players get salty over stuff like this. Although, to be fair, the second sideboard option, and you guys know this, but I don't think I've ever told my audience this. So I had the 2 sideboards. I had my one regular sideboard that had my extra control pieces. This is where like Prismari Command and stuff would go. So I had more ways to answer cards. And then I had an aggro sideboard, If one of our players went to the tournament, I used that sideboard. I would sacrifice utility in every game to have a smokescreen sideboard that was 4 copies of Darcy, 4 copies of Goblin Guide.
It was so funny every time.
And it was a thing where there was another person in our play group where I was like, hey, I'm struggling countering this card. And they're like, well, yeah, the Death Shadow deck loses to aggro, though, because it sacrifices so much life to function that you can just take advantage of that by doming them. And I went, oh, okay, cool. So this aggro deck, this aggro side, I would take out my Bogles, because it turns out a Goblin Guide is also a mutate target. I would take out my Bogles and put in all the hasty creatures, Monastery, Swiftspear, Darcy, and Goblin Guide, and just go, okay, welcome to game 2. I am speed. And just like
fast.
Just like I have 0 utility against every other deck here, but I ended up winning that tournament because the final round, when it had the I think we didn't do cut the top at that point, but we had just like points made it to where everybody who had gone undefeated fought each other. So final round, the 2 undefeateds were me and the person I brought the sideboard specifically for, and he didn't know I did it. So...
And I'm sorry, but changing virtually your entire deck using the entirety of your sideboard between game 1 and 2 is actually a very strong strategy.
It's what I used to do in Yu-Gi-Oh! In Yu-Gi-Oh! I had a stun deck, and the sideboard was a gadget. I had a gadget deck sideboard and a monarch deck sideboard, so I could switch between super resilient engine deck or, okay, I was a stun deck, now I'm going to control you forever. So it's a strategy I took from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And brought it here, and it turns out it works perfectly good in Magic.
Yeah.
It's great. Okay, so you said there was a topic you needed to pivot to.
Yes. Because Gail said Supreme Verdict.
Yeah.
So as we all know, everything in Magic is power creeping right now, but one of the most underspoken power creeps going on is counterspell creep.
Mm-hmm.
Not just with the spells coming out there counterspelling, like an offer you can't refuse and things like that, but also with ward, because people, and if anyone doesn't know, ward is not hexproof. It is a counterspell. It is definitively a counterspell. So things that have this spell can't be countered are that entire sect of cards. Any card printed on it that says this spell can't be countered would be my other vote for underrated card.
I just put up Suspicious Detonation on here.
Yes.
Suspicious Detonation is really, really funny against word commanders.
No, you want something even funnier. I'm gonna bring up Lithiform Barrage. I think it's Barrage. I'm looking up real fast. You want to see something even funnier. Lithiform, let's see.
But yes, spells that can be countered are in fact great. I also hate them as a control player, so don't play them against me, play them against everybody else.
So if I, as a Golgari enjoyer, brought Abrupt Decay
please
into our pod, Abrupt Decay, that people don't ever read that line of text that says it can't be countered, because it never matters.
It always matters against me, because if we're playing 60 card format, I probably will have a counterspell in my hand.
All right, but I play Abrupt Decay in 60 card.
Exactly, that's the issue.
There's also Fry, which is great.
See, Fry matters less to me because I usually don't have.
Fry is there to turn Teferi into Swiss cheese. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
That's the real reason it's there.
But also, what's a very power crept, overpowered, problematic card that's been released recently that has ward on it that happens to be white?
You're right. Voha exists.
And Fry says, "Hey Voha, let's have a chat."
You know what else says that for even less mana?
Lithiform Barrage.
Lithomantic Barrage.
Or Lithomantic Barrage,
Yeah.
right? Not Lithoform, yeah.
It's 1
Lithomantic,
damage to any
yeah.
creature or planeswalker, but if it's white or blue, fuck you.
That card is over $1 right now because of Voha.
Because it turns Voha off instantaneously.
Yeah. Like that's like that is an amazing piece of cardboard only because of power creep. That is a trash card if not for power creep.
No, I
But
can agree with that.
But that's
I
yeah,
do.
that's what I was trying to get at is counterspell creep is insane right now because they're both printing new counterspells and they're printing ward on permanents, which is just more counterspells.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. So we do need to get to another underrated card for me, and mine's going to be really quick. We all know exactly what it is. It's this thing, this Meteor Golem.
I knew you were
Yep.
gonna say
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, yeah.
Oh, all right. That's it. I mean,
Okay, we
got
discussed
next-
Meteor Golem.
Well, it's just, okay, look, we've already had the conversation on people don't run enough interaction, and when they do, sometimes the interaction needs to be able to hit more cards. And we've had the conversation about blink decks. Boy, howdy, guess which card goes hard in both of those situations?
Well, yeah, it's a Meteor Golem. Yeah.
It's Meteor Golem.
Mhm.
Also, if you run that new Golem, not Golem Tribal, whatever his name is, that that flip artifact guy from
Oh,
Lost
Sexton?
Caverns. Yeah, you run the Golem, not Golem Tribal, and then you run like now. Okay, I'm gonna say a card, and it's probably gonna spawn a topic, but Roaming Throne or anything that can double the
Oh no, that should have
triggered
been an
abilities of
overrated card.
golems. With
God,
Meteor Golem out.
I'm so tired of hearing people say, you know what would make your deck better? A Roaming Throne. Boy, howdy! You know what makes cheeseburgers better? Fucking cheese.
But anything that copies the triggered ability of golems, which now golem is becoming a real tribal thing.
It is. Well, I mean, there's also Precursor Golem. Precursor Golem with everyone was really funny.
All right, I'm gonna get off the Meteor Golem topic, if only to get us off the Roaming Throne topic.
Excellent.
There you go, Gail. You owe me $5.
We got there.
We got
there.
I'm
I just had to use his kryptonite.
I'm just so tired. I have a deck with Roaming Throne, and I'm so tired. I'm so tired of, hey, you know what goes in your deck? It's Roaming Throne. Yeah, I'm sure it does. I took Panharmonicon out of Pantlaza. I'm not about to put Hyper Panharmonicon in Pantlaza.
I do need to put it in Umbris, though.
I'm sure you do. Moving on, Gale. The underrated card to get us far away from Roaming Throne.
My underrated card is going to be a card that doesn't go well with Roaming Throne. It's Scheming Fence.
Okay.
So Scheming Fence, it's a great card if you're in blue-white. I like every time I build a blue-white deck, I look at Scheming Fence and I'm like, this card should go in. Because it looks at the board, it chooses a permanent. Also, you don't choose a permanent. It's not a trigger. Your opponent can't respond with you choosing a permanent. It's a replacement
needle. It's pithing needle.
It's a pithing needle, but you also get it.
It's thieving. It's thieving needle, is what it is.
It's a thieving needle, yeah. So, like, sure, you have to wait a turn to use the ability if it requires you to tap it. But like, there's nothing better than your opponent going turn 1 Soul Ring and you go turn 2 Scheming Fence.
Our Soul Ring, but actually only mine. My Soul Ring.
Not even hour.
So my thought immediately was on Birds of Paradise, and I was like, my Scheming Fence looks like a nice Birds of Paradise. But then you said Soul Ring, and I'm like, no, let him cook.
Yeah. So it's been so many times where I just look like there'll be something degenerate going on, and I'll just like look at my hand and see a Scheming Fence, and I'm like, oh, this just turns it off.
Guys, this punishes Mana Crypt players because they still get the trigger.
Hey, you're not wrong. I think that's the best part.
Thank you so much for playing my Mana Crypt, buddy.
You may have a Paul gag in response.
It just goes, and it just does everything I would want it to do in like a pithing needle type effect.
It feels like when I was playing CDH the other night, and I'm not going to name persons' names because it doesn't matter, but they got the nuts start of the the Mana Crypt, the Mana Vault, just just everything down at once, and I just looked at my hand and went, "Oh, Collector Ophi's here."
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
It's that same feeling of just like, oh, okay, that's fine.
It's just so good. It's just so good.
I felt bad too because I went, here's my dock side. I have a token for every single thing you've done. Crack all the tokens, play Shalai and Halar, and play Collector Ophi. Yay!
It's just like, it's one of those cards that like after you've played it the one time and you just see it go off, you're just like, oh, how can I break this even more? If you didn't notice, I like blue cards. I like blue creatures specifically.
You like blue white the best.
You literally are real life Teferi.
You said it, not me.
That is my MO. But yeah, so Scheming Fence has made its way into a lot of my blue white decks.
Are you 3 fairy or 5 fairy?
I am definitely a 5 fairy.
Okay.
Which Teferi got his ass kicked by Nicobolus?
It was before all of those.
Oh.
Actually, wait.
It was the creature. It's the creature version.
Yeah, because I was about to say, like, we didn't even have Planeswalker cards when that happened, because we got Planeswalker cards post mending, and that was pre-mending. So, so Gale, you never get to be as strong as Teferi when he tried to square up with Nicobolus and lost.
That's unfortunate.
You get to you get to be the Teferi that went to Zalfir and looked at spears and went, "Huh, those might hurt me." You get to be that Teferi.
The Teferi that took an arrow to the knee.
Oh Lord.
Jasta says only villains play Dockside. You're right in Casual Commander, but I said CDH.
But the thing about Dockside is that it's just like one of those cards where it's like, I wouldn't put it in my casual deck to begin with, because a lot of the players in casual are ramping with lands,
ramp spells,
and the creatures.
Yeah, he wants Mana Crypts. He wants to, like, I am of two minds. On the one hand, yes, I agree with you, but on the other hand, people do play non-green in casual.
I don't agree. That's just wrong.
I
have a non-green deck. I only play for posterity.
I'm sure that the blue-white player only plays non-green for posterity.
Yeah, all of my decks are bent or better.
Biminem, underrated card. Please pull us away from not Teferi.
So this one, I guess. This one is, I am saying this card specifically, but also any other card that would fit this specific suit, Tyvar's Stand.
Okay, let's hear you out.
Specifically, for Tyvar's Stand, it goes beyond just being a Tameo safekeeping or whatever, because it also produces output. It also produces a kill. You get the hexproof and the indestructible, and if all you need is the hexproof and the indestructible, then you just pay 1. You just let X be 0, and you're fine. If you need the extra mana, you can dump in as you choose. It is always flexible. It's always useful.
I wish that the card didn't cost $2.
It is an expensive uncommon. Also, if you have cost reducers like Emerald Medallion and things like that, you will always get a profit going into it. Whereas like Tameo Safekeeping, that card doesn't do anything for you. But Tyvar Stand, because it has an unending, ability within the CMC, you can have as many cost reducers as you want, and Tyvar Stand just gets strictly better.
That's fair. I wish that it costed less because I wanted to put it in Zaxara. And I was told I can't put it in Zaxara because it's $2.
Oh yeah, for the 15.
Yep.
Yeah.
You were told no. But I think that another thing that it gets around is that not only does it get around plus egg, it doesn't get not only does it get around like board wise, but it also like the new card nuclear fallout. Let's say they do it just enough to kill your commander. No, a normal thing won't, like a Tamio safekeeping won't save your commander. Tara stand will.
Yeah,
And
it'll save you from a neg X type effect, like Toxic Deluge.
Yeah, toxic deluge. If they just do it just enough. So not only that, but it's like they can't even like. There's not much they can do to stop Tyrastan from saving your commander.
They would
And I
literally
think
have to do like a mass exile, mass bounce, or edict effect. They are restricted to those 3 outlets.
Yeah, so I think that Tara's stand just has the like all modes. You're trying to target my commander? No. You're trying to destroy everything? No. You're trying to give all creatures minus X? No.
Like it's a good card, and it's in the best color for that too, because it is to survive the neg X, depending how much they cast it for. You might have to dump a little mana into this. You're in the single best color to dump mana.
You're in green.
Like it's just a good piece of cardboard.
That's fair. So I know where most of this conversation's coming from, though. Like the real place it's coming from. It's coming from Pioneer. This is Biminum shills for his thing in the ice deck day.
No, just put the entire deck up. That's
Actually, no, the exact spot this comes from, because as I told you when we were chatting before we started the video, is I looked at a stack of cards sitting next to me, and I picked my 2 underrateds from the stack of cards sitting next to me.
Yes, but the stack of cards was next to you because of your Pioneer deck.
You think I'm that organized? No.
Okay, but I do like Tyvar Stan, and I do think there's a good few situations that it's good for. Because I like Blacksmith's skill. I've liked that card since it came out in Modern Horizons 2, and I always try to find a slot for it when I'm playing a deck that's white. Oftentimes, it gets replaced because, like, Get Lost and Stroke of Midnight are in the game now. So sometimes I'll take away protection in favor of making my opponent regret casting a spell at me. But it's...
Stroke of Midnight is nasty.
I love Stroke of Midnight. It's so good.
Why did they give another generous gift?
And then immediately give us a Get Lost, which is a pseudo one, right afterwards. Like,
and let's not forget Fateful Absence.
Yeah, white now has, if you're playing mono white and you need to remove things off the board, you now have Generous Gift, Get Lost, Fateful Absence, Stroke of Midnight, Swords to Plowshare, Path to Exile, and those are just like the cream of the crop ones.
Don't forget their new Narset's Reversal that they got. Reprieve.
Oh, Reprieve. Yeah, you've got Reprieve as well. So you've got 6 to 7 cream of the crop single target removal spells, all in white, that you don't even have to think about. You can just put them in decks as auto includes, which brings me to my overrated. There's an auto include that we need to talk about, and it's an entire grouping of cards, but I'm just gonna put this on the screen, and this is a stand-in for every effect like this in Casual Commander. This is Thassa's Oracle. Now, if you are privileged enough to have not played against Thassa's Oracle, the effect basically says, when this ETBs, if I have below a certain number of cards in my deck, in Thassa's case it's Devotion to Blue amount, then you just win the game. You just win automatically. This is almost always cast in with an Ad Naz or a Demonic Consultation, something to make it to where the amount of cards on the top of the deck is...
Or Tainted Pact.
Yeah, or Tainted Pact. It makes the amount of cards on top of the deck really, really low, and then Thassa's auto wins the game. This is also the Exquisite Blood, Sanguine Bond combo. This is also like any of those instant win combos that specifically do not synergize with your deck. Like if you're playing an Aristocrat deck, I can understand having the Exquisite Blood, Sanguine Bond combo in it. I don't agree with it. I don't put it in. But if you have it in there, those are at least cards that are already doing what your deck wants to do to begin with, right? If you're playing a zombie deck, like a Dimir zombie deck, you're already running Rooftop Storm. So if you put Acerak in, I'm not going to be mad at you for having Acerak as a dungeon card. But it does go infinite with Rooftop Storm.
See, the thing about it is, it's like, not only... I don't like Glasses Oracle. I don't like the card at all. It's not like it's overrated. I just don't like
it.
I don't like the card.
I will say one thing about Thassa's Oracle. Yeah. I like when my opponents play it because it makes Earl better. Because they want to do things like Adnaz, and I have had many players bitch. They're like, if he hits me, I won't have enough life to afford Adnaz.
Oh boy, that blows. Anyway.
The whole thing about those guys building that deck is they keep their total CMC for their whole deck under 40. Earl hands are about to have some fun with that.
Because they're banking on the fact that their life total won't go down in a game of CDH.
And Earl's about to make them lose almost half their life in a single swing. All of a sudden, now they can't Adnaz through their deck.
Yep.
Like, literally, I turn off their ability to Adnaz into their Thassas.
So the thing that made me think about this, and this is not aimed at the person who put this in their deck, because I had a conversation with this person before we even went into our casual tournament. But they were playing a King Kenny deck, Kenrith the King. And Kenrith is a known problem commander. Most, like, Wooburg commanders tend to be, because you can run everything. But the deck basically was a control package, and then the Exquisite Blood Sanguine Bond combo. Like, that was it. That was the deck top to bottom. There wasn't really any other easy avenue to winning the game outside of that combo, and then having control pieces. And they asked me, like, hey, is anybody going to be upset that I'm playing this deck in the tournament? And my response was, I don't think they will, if they are responsible players. Because if they're responsible players, that deck's not winning at a table. It's not. Your commander's not going to stay on the board for more than a turn, and each part of that combo is going to get interrupted when it happens. Like, nobody's going to be like, there's a Sanguine Bond in the Wooburg Good Stuff package. I wonder what other cards might lurk in that 99. Like, nobody's asking that question in a game of Commander unless they're new. If you see one half of that, you know the other half is there somewhere. And then we got paired up with each other, and King Kenny got to last for all of a picosecond. And then even after drawing 60 cards, the player was not able to win the game because Pantlaza said, I get to win now, not you. And that's kind of my problem with those kinds of game-winning effects, is a lot of players will construct a deck that is somewhat-ish functional, and then it has one of those win cons in it, and then they'll think their deck, plural, the 99 cards in their deck is well constructed just because they have won some games with it. But anything could have been beside the 2-card infinite combo, and your deck could have won. It doesn't mean that you constructed a good deck. Not talking about the King Kenny player here. That's just the example that brought it to mind. Is we see that a lot at various card shops, is a person will build a commander pile of stuff that doesn't synergize with itself, and then there's some infinite in there that lets them win the game. I'm not salty that they won. I just wish they would have built a better deck in the first place.
Yeah, I think that, like, so whenever I build a deck, I tend to build a deck that dirtle a lot. So I have to be conscious of putting in some win conditions. But when I put in a win condition, I put in a win condition that synergizes in my deck somehow.
Yeah.
I like a lot of artifacts. I like to build a lot of artifacts. So
if you put Mirrodin Besieged in your deck, I wouldn't blink twice.
Yeah, a lot of the things that I have are either the ways to win I have are either artifacts, or they are things are things that I can get back with my artifacts.
So, like, if you're playing an artifact deck, Mirrodin Besieged is in there, or a Hellkite Tyrant is in there.
Correct.
I'm not gonna be salty that you put in a card that says, I assembled a board state of 20 artifacts. That means I get to win the game. Like, no, that your deck did a synergy and it won off of it. That's neat.
Yeah. So, but I will not be playing something like in my black deck. I'm not putting Exquisite Blood because neither of them do anything
Yeah,
for my deck.
they're do nothing cards until the other is on the board.
So, Saris, I think your problem with that, with the Thassa's in there with no direction, you don't like when you're playing against someone and their deck walks down protagonist lane and happens to trip over a rock, and that rock happens to be the One Ring.
Yeah,
And like, you know
like
what I mean?
that's and I think that's exactly what it is, because I like seeing when there's a well constructed deck with good synergies that is it's obviously got a game plan, right? Like there's a game plan the deck is going for. It's flavorful either because of lore stuff or because of game mechanics being very, very synergistic. I like that. When it's a pile of oops, I drew the win con, just go play CEDH at that point, because that is where that style of deck building tends to work better, because CEDH is a pile of good stuff.
Except I'm actually gonna say I think that deck building is it's the Skull Greymon for the people who know Digimon. It is when early on people choose the wrong path and don't develop the knowledge of how to build a deck and just follow combos they find online. Usually the person who's building the disheveled mashed potatoes of win cons, they usually know the least about deck building of practically anyone you'll meet. They're doing it because they don't know any better.
Yeah, because I will tell you, as a person who plays a lot of CDH, I play a lot of CDH. If you just throw win cons at people, you're more likely going to lose.
Well, right, but that's where the pile, like, so the Kenny example, a control pile that is a shell around a handful of win cons, that's a standard CEDH building practice. That's the building practice of Heliod. That's the building practice of Shalai and Halar. That's the building practice of Dina. Like, any of those, my commander exists as one half of the win con, or my commander is a vehicle to get me to the win con, and I have a control shell around me. That's a very standard CEDH building practice.
Yep.
So that's why I brought that up there, not just as a, if you put good stuff in a pile and then put a win con in, your deck is CEDH. No, I know it's not. No. I know that's not the case.
But that just doesn't work anywhere, though. Like,
yeah, that doesn't work in any format.
Yeah, it's like, nah, that's not gonna work. But
you know what I feel like is kind of a flaw with CEDH, and correct me if I'm wrong, or if y'all disagree. So in all competitive games ever, cardboard, video game, I don't care, anything, in all forms of competition, meta changes, because you'll get the meta busters, you'll get the meta breakers, you get the things that stop meta from winning, and meta changes. With CEDH, that virtually never happens. CEDH feels very stagnant.
I very much disagree, actually, because I think that the format has changed a lot recently. Because
is this just due to new product being out, though?
Kind of.
Because new product coming out isn't meta. The product coming out is availability of new resources.
No. I'm talking about new styles, like the like Thassa's like Turbo Thassa's Demcon. You don't see that anymore. The like a lot of the Turbo decks are starting to fall out of favor and it's becoming more of a mid-range deck.
I did notice somebody mentioned that in my comment section, actually, about CEDH.
It's less of, it's like CEDH is now more of a, I'm gonna bring out these huge value pieces and I'm just gonna draw a bunch of cards.
So I'm glad that that's happening, but I guess what I meant was not that the format isn't doing that, and I know I said that and I said it wrong. It's that all the players bitch about it.
Oh yeah,
like we were talking about with the Blasphemous Act thing and all that back then. How all the players are like, how dare meta shift, turn it off, I'll make the bad guy go away. And it's all the people gritting and digging their nails and trying to stop meta from rotating, and meta's just going to rotate.
I think
I think
that's a
thing for everyone.
I've
Everyone
noticed
though.
I've noticed that in Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've noticed that
Mhm.
in 60 card Magic as well though. Like
Mhm.
that's a very common thing in any card game when you a lot of it comes down to this. If I have a financial investment in a deck and then something comes around that creams it, a lot of people have an emotional attachment to the money they spent on the deck. And
Sunk
if the
cost.
and if the thing, well, it's not sunk cost because it's recognizing that abandoning what you have put money in means putting a lot of money in something else. And in so like in Pokemon, it isn't as much of an issue because in Pokemon, one, decks are cheaper in general, but two, Pokemon for the longest time had what was called the staple shell, where there was 25 to 30 cards that were unanimously run in all decks, and then everything else was what made your deck different. Yu-Gi-Oh used to do the same thing. Yu-Gi-Oh had the staple shell. Goat format is the best example of this. There's a 25 card staple shell in Goat format, and it's the 15 other cards that usually don't cost a whole lot that define what a deck is. And again, usually don't cost a whole lot. Even back then, those extra 15 cards didn't cost a whole lot. If you had a Thousand Eyes Restrict standard Goat deck, that would have been $300 back in the day. But changing it to a zombie deck costed you $15 to trade out the cards necessary to make it a zombie deck. Otherwise, it was the same deck. Magic doesn't have that, though. Not really. If I play Golgari mid-range, I have the pieces I need to make a Golgari control deck, and I have a couple of the pieces maybe to make an aggro style deck, but that's not going to work very well because it's Golgari. So then if I want to go aggro because the meta needs it, I'm going to have to invest into a mono red deck or an Is It Prowess deck. Modern Is It Prowess. If heavy control is what's necessary, that I might not be able to play mid-range anymore, I may need to shift into a Sheoldred Days Undoing style package instead, and that's going to cost me a lot of money there. So it's not so much sunk cost as it is
It's
recognizing
diet standard.
yeah, it's artificial rotation kind of sort of that makes it
But
where you have to spend way too
when-
much money.
When you've experienced that, I don't want to keep dumping money into this thing because meta's changing. And what we'll use mad as the term here. You get mad at the meta, right? The non-human idea of what is competitive, but you don't get mad at the other players that are breaking meta. You don't sit at the guy across the table running Bogles at Modern Night when no one else is running Bogles and go, "Hey, buddy, your mother should have swallowed." Like, it's
Right,
different.
but we
And for some
often
people do.
yeah, but we often do find that players get mad at the player specifically for bringing the non-meta or the meta changing or the meta breaking thing to the table. I will agree with that. I think
Exactly. And they're wrong to do that because
yeah,
breaking meta is what is most competitive.
Well, so here's the yeah, and I agree. I agree absolutely. You should not be mad at them. Well, you should. The issue is, and also sometimes, like if you want to adapt, right? It's not necessarily the fact that you're mad. You can also be mad at yourself for not being not.
everything just broke on my end.
Yeah, we lost you.
We lost you. Well, I guess since we don't have them now,
Control deck, and I need to.
oh, there we go.
change
You're
into a-
back.
Oh, hey, I'm back.
You don't need to repeat what you said. You cut out.
Well, I was saying that it's also can be mad at yourself for being unable to change, and not only mentally, but like physically be unable to change. So let's say that I'm playing my blue-white control deck, and I need to change, and the meta is now all about Shieldred, right? I don't have the money to afford Shieldreds.
Yeah,
So I'll just sit there and-
$300 in Sheoldreds is not something anybody should be okay paying.
And so now I just hit to look at it and be like, well, I can't really adapt to that because, and like as much as I want to try to find things in my price range that I can adapt, maybe I'm just unable to. So that's when you get mad at yourself for being unable to, and that's kind of like a mental thing.
So there's so Yu-Gi-Oh players of this is 10 years ago, Yu-Gi-Oh! Mind specifically. But there was a moment where there were only 3 decks in the format. there was Dragon Rulers, there was Spellbooks, and then
Insectors?
it wasn't Insectors. They weren't out yet. It was an insect-based deck, but it was like dark insects, and they made up maybe 5% of the meta.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I can't remember what somebody in the comment section can tell me what the deck was at the time, but I was playing Heraldic Beast during that time because it turns out Genome Heritage stealing a Draco Sax ability is funny, haha, good times. And people had the terrible habit of putting Draco Sack in attack mode at my local meta, and Genome Heritage puts their attack to 0. So I get a Draco Sack, and also your Draco Sack is now a hole that I can punch in your life points. And Solemn Judgment at 3 was the meta at the time, so nobody could afford to have a hole in their life points. But there was a lot of discussion around that time that it was one of the most healthy times for Yu-Gi-Oh's meta because there were only really 2 meta decks. It was before Hat and Trap Trick Serenity. Trap Tricks were a thing, but the hands themselves had not come out yet, so Hat was not a thing yet. I used Mermelio, was the only Trap Tricks I used at the time. So a lot of players felt like that was a very, very healthy meta because there were only a handful of decks, so professional players only had to practice against 1 or 2 decks, and then they could go to YCS and beyond and get a lot of winnings. I feel like that mentality has and will always be toxic and stupid for the health of any game ever. Diversity of playstyle is way more important to a game and a meta's health than having a handful of very predictable options. And for some reason, it was a conversation at the time in that community, and has been many times, that like, oh, good and healthy metas are the ones that only have a handful of top decks. And then everybody else goes, but we don't want to play one of the 2 top decks. We'd like to play something else. Chris Kiger says, I'm confused as to when a deck becomes a CDH deck. So CDH is a mentality of building a deck more than it is anything else. There is a tier list of CDH decks that are obviously CDH, but like, it is primarily, if your deck's goal is get to its win con as early as possible and control the board as efficiently as possible, and no barrier of finances or deck building strategy or archetype is in the way of reaching those goals as fast and as efficiently as possible. If your deck wins between turn 0 and turn 3, or it staxes out the other players between turn 0 and turn 3, and then has an instant win condition of some kind it's trying to get to, those are all CDH style decks. The issue is that when people try to build that style of deck in a casual setting where they're either playing a glass cannon and they're upset that the players with more interaction are killing them, or they're playing a deck that wins so quickly in general that the casual decks can't do anything because they're focused more on funny haha synergies and winning the game through... God, it sounds pretentious to say winning a game through style, but it kind of is.
So the thing that I think that the easiest way to define a CDH deck is hyper efficiency. It is like, so you can have efficiency in a casual deck. That's fine. It's when you go beyond what like the society, I want to say it, the community thinks is normal for your efficiency. That's when you become into a CDH deck. That's how I would define it.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna offer a different definition.
Sure.
A CDH deck is defined by what the intention of the deck builder was. Are you building a deck to do a thing? Now we ask, what is the thing it's going to do? I built an Aristocrats deck to sacrifice creatures. Okay. If your focus when you built the deck was to win the game, then it's a CDH deck. If you sat there and said, I want to win, and that is the focus of this deck, it's CEDH. If you sit there and say, well, this playthrough, I want to wear the red wig, then you're not CEDH because you're building a deck to do something other than just win the game.
I disagree because that's only because I think that everybody should build a deck
to win.
No,
to
but I
win.
mean with it being the soaring,
Well, yeah,
the core
well,
and
yeah,
sole focus.
well, yeah. Like my thing is like, do I build the deck to just sit there and do nothing? No, I build the deck to win. That is my goal. I don't like how I get there is different, but do I build the deck to win? Yes. When I start building a deck, I say, okay, I want to win the game. Like that is my end goal. That is my goal. I I might want to be like, hey, I want to be in stock, but like I want to win. So just saying that, like, that's very.
But I'm saying
Um,
if that's your first, foremost, and primary and main,
mhm,
like that
yes.
is the 51, and then the rest all add up to 49. Like if it is the biggest and by far thing, then I would say that's at least venturing into CEDH.
I think that the issue is that I don't think that mindset is necessarily a CDH mindset that like we should associate that with a CDH mindset, because for me,
I
like,
don't think I've built any deck that doesn't have the goal of winning the game. Like the
No, and
primary goal is winning.
well, so what I was
Yeah.
going to say is that all three of us, because I know how all three of us build decks, we go, I want to do this function, and I want to win. But the words went in the order of I want to do this function.
Oh, okay.
So
I
priority
see
number
what you're
one,
meaning.
yeah,
So-
priority number one is I want to do this function, and then priority number two means I still want this to be good enough to win. Whereas a CEDH builder is going to go, I want to win the game, and I'm going to find whatever the hell does that.
I think we're
mm,
missing a component though. So a major component of the is it CEDH conversation will always be speed. You can have a deck that is built with the sole purpose of winning, like that being the primary purpose, but if the deck does not have the speed to get there with all the other decks of the meta, then the deck is not, in my opinion, a CEDH deck. It is a deck built with the mentality of one. Like, so the King Kenny deck was a deck built with a CEDH mentality. It was a pile of good stuff and an infinite win con that had nothing to do with the commander or the deck. No synergy, no style, just control the board and then win this way. That's a CEDH styled deck. But was the deck effective enough at doing what it did to be a CEDH deck? That's a question for deck construction. And my answer for that would be no.
Yeah, you're defining it based on quality and caliber.
So what I'm hearing is that both, like, a CDH deck requires both the hyper efficiency and the mentality. So what I'm hearing is that we're both right.
Yeah, you need.
Yeah.
So like we're running out of time. Otherwise, I would have brought up that I can bring it up now because we're here. But yeah, Mana Crypt is an example. A lot of people will not run a Mana Crypt in a casual deck. One, because they can't afford it. It's too expensive. It's a $200 card for no good reason. But we'll also not run it because the type of deck the type of game that comes out of that is a game that ends quickly and the other players didn't get a chance to play as well because it's so fast. It helps your deck be so fast that you run ahead of the other players. A typical casual commander deck does not want to run ahead of the other players so much. It wants to be ahead. It wants to be in a winning position. But it does not try to run so far ahead that there is no possible way of catching up for the other players. There's a mentality that the other players matter a little bit when you're building a casual deck. But when you're playing a CDH deck, on the other hand, there are no conversations about speed. There is simply go fast.
Yeah, I get that. It's so there's a term in racing, specifically in car racing, like in drag racing. If you go to the local race yard to qualify, if you go too slow, if you don't mash it, like if you're literally racing a car and you don't like floor it, and they can prove it, they'll say you sandbagged and they'll disqualify you because they want to match you against consistent players. But with CEDH, there's a no holds bar, there's a no sandbag, there's no weight classes. It is everyone beats the shit out of everyone at whatever you brought in.
Yeah. Like, so if I'm on turn one in a casual game and I have Soul Ring in my hand, I'll oftentimes not play Soul Ring. Not because I think that I shouldn't play Soul Ring, but because the mentality of the players at the table changes based on what turn you play the Soul Ring. And oftentimes you don't even need the Soul Ring on turns 1 or 2. It's not getting you anywhere in a lot of decks that fast if you're playing casual. So there is a conversation of like, when do I play this so that it does not cause as much friction at the table? In a CDH game, the Soul Ring goes down turn 1 as fast as possible so that I can get everything else out now, or better yet, yesterday.
So I think the thing about I think that, so when you play a Soul Ring on turn 1, everybody looks at you and it's like, we got to kill him.
Yep.
We got to kill him. It's got to end. But in TDH, when you play a Soul Ring on turn 1 or a Mana Crypt on turn 1, they're like, good, he didn't feed the fish. That is like,
yeah,
like
he didn't drop it down when a Mystic Remora was going to come down.
Yeah, like a lot of people would rather see a Mana Rock than a Mystic Remora or a Ristic Study.
Yep. Hey, that's God. It's so easy to bring up that one though. In Casual Commander, I really think Ristic Study's overrated.
I think that they are too. I think so. The thing about it is that I think that it's overrated, except for the fact that it's really good because nobody respects it.
Yeah.
When it's on the board, nobody respects it.
Yeah, when it's on the board, people just go, yeah, you can have the draw because I want to play Solitaire on my board. And you're like, oh, okay. Fuck. So I actually at the tournament last week, Kenrith player dropped down the Ristic Study early. I paid my taxes until Pantlaza came down. Once Pantlaza came down, stopped paying my taxes. Because once you've played against my Pantlaza, if it's not casting ramp spells off the top and screwing me,
it's if it's not doing that, it's you cast Pantlaza and then you hit another ramp spell. That's what's happening.
Yeah, if it's not doing that, it's going off to the races and trying to find Itali or Galta or something that creates overwhelming power is what it's trying to get to. So at a certain point, I can't play the Ristic Study anymore because the deck literally can't pay for it. But on every turn where the opportunity was there, every single one, you can bet I paid my taxes. 110%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time, please pay it.
So I think that Ristic Study and by extension Smothering Tithe are decks where people like, I've had people who are like, I played a Smothering Tithe in one of my decks, in my Nelly Borka deck, because I force people to draw cards and then they can't pay them. It is what it is, right? So I played it, and a lot of people will draw their card. They will not pay the 2. They will
even if they have the 2 to pay and they're not playing any other cards.
They will play no cards, and then they will just pass the turn, not paying the 2. And I'm like, what is going on here? I'm okay with it in the moment because I got a treasure. That's all I care about. But like, I'm just sitting there like, why? I actually ended up taking Smothering Tide out of my Negan deck because I didn't need it. Because it doesn't do anything other than make you a bunch of mana. And having a bunch of mana is not the same as having a bunch of cards.
Yeah, my biggest issue with these kind of cards are just the style of game they create. So I like it when turns can be snappy. I really appreciate when players think about their turn before their turn happens, so that they can do a couple of plays and be done. Like I play AC, and I love playing AC, and I recognize that if I take more than 30 seconds on my turn, I'm the villain. I'm already the villain because I'm playing a super strong deck, but once I start monopolizing everybody's time... And Ristic Study... Sorry, go on.
What I'm hearing is that we need to force everybody to play Control so they learn how to think about what they think so that they make decisions quickly.
Yes, that would actually be very helpful, because if you're playing Control, you have to look at everybody's cards they play on their turns as they play them, or you're playing Control wrong. You don't
just make people run more interaction. That would do the same thing as well.
No. See, but the thing about it is that Control specifically, because Control in 60 card requires you're not only playing against your opponent, you're playing against a clock.
Yeah.
So you need
Oh,
to
you're
be
talking
able
about
to.
60. I thought you were talking about Commander.
Well,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
in 60, I get that.
Do it in 60 so that they learn the rule for Commander. So as an example,
Yeah. I
there
agree with
was
that. I agree with that.
one of the locals that we used to play at. Me and Gail were playing Pioneer. The previous week, there was a player who was playing the Days Undoing control deck against Gale, who was playing, I think it was Esper Control at the time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it was control versus control, and the game went to time on like game 2.
Game 2. Mm-hmm.
So next week, I brought my control deck in for my first time playing it. I'd been goldfishing it all week. I was excited. I bought the precon and I had started upgrading it, and I was like, it was just to the point where I was comfy taking it into a tournament. And I was like, yes, I want to bring this in. And we both said, I hope we don't fight against each other because control versus control is a nightmare. And then we did get paired against each other in like round 2, and we finished our game at the 25. Like we finished our match at like the 25-minute mark.
And we went to all 3 games.
And we both looked at each other and went, oh, the problem isn't control. The problem is control players not watching what the opponent's doing and thinking about how they're going to react to it. The problem isn't that the deck is slow. The deck is slow, but that could be compensated for by thinking about your turns in advance.
Yeah. That's a huge problem in Commander, regardless of what type of deck people are playing.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, it's now my turn. I'm gonna untap. I'm gonna make my choices now because I'm about to pick up a single piece of cardboard, and surely that's gonna change my entire turn. Oh, look, it's a basic forest. That didn't change anything I'm about to do. But
Yeah.
they do that all the time. It's like, all right, move to upkeep. Trigger goes on the stack to start considering what the fuck I'm gonna do on my turn.
Yeah, and it's a very frustrating thing to deal with, and it's not that Rhystic Study and cards like that are weak cards. It's that they create environments where players who are already not considering what they're going to do on the next turn, even sometimes 2 plays into their turn, they're not thinking about that. It's adding one extra thing that person has to think about so that players who already play irresponsibly, players who already play very slow, now get to play at molasses speed with honey on their hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was one last overrated card that Gail wanted to get to before we conclude. Do you want to get to that one, or do you want to close up shop?
It's really fast. It's really fast.
Okay, here it is.
Hey, everybody. Ancient Copper Dragons, just stop playing it. The end.
Yeah.
Look,
I like it in Miriam.
Oh, just stop playing it.
Just stop playing it?
Just stop playing it. I don't care what deck you're playing. Just stop playing.
Just stop playing Ancient Copper Dragons. Your treasures deck, your Prosper deck that really needs the treasures. No, get rid of it.
You don't need treasures in Prosper. You need cards in exile in Prosper. Let's get that straight. This is the issue that I have with this card is that everybody will see, hey, I make treasures. What do I put in the deck? Ancient Copper Dragon. I don't care about what like. Prosper doesn't care about treasures. He doesn't. He doesn't care about
profit off him.
He cared about having cards from in exile. Don't.
So every Prosper player that's playing a Reign of Riches as their win con.
You don't need Revel in Riches. I don't care. You make enough treasures with Prosper anyway. You do find a better win con.
I got you. Every Prosper player hearing me, replace Ancient Copper Dragon with Bonehorde Trichosaur. That's it. Wrap up the podcast.
Yep, that's it.
Bonehorde Trichosaur is great.
That's actually, please do. It's better. It helps your deck more, and just stop playing Ancient Copper Dragon. Just that's it. That's it.
Maybe I'll consider taking it out of Miriam. Maybe.
So the thing about it is, like Miriam, I'm okay with it. Air Dragon, I'm not okay with it. Funny enough.
Okay, explain that.
So the thing about the Alien Copper Dragon is that when you have 2 of them, it's really good.
Yeah.
The issue that I have with Ancient Copper Dragon is that it's super. Like, it's a lightning rod for removal, right?
Yeah.
So when you have one of them and it dies, you just paid 5 mana to do nothing. In a deck that already just plays its turns, doing one thing a turn and then doing nothing else, kind of trash. But with Miram, you get 2 of them, so they have to have 2 removal spells. So you get 2 cards out of hand, and you went 2 for 1 instead of a 1 for 1.
Okay, I could understand that a little more. I thought it was because Ur-Dragon is already a deck that like wants mana acceleration, but it doesn't want mana acceleration at the sluggish speed that Ancient Copper Dragon can produce it. Because like if Copper Dragon makes impact with somebody, it makes you a lot of treasures immediately, but that's after you've got 6 mana on the board and after you've either given it haste or waited a turn cycle.
That's also only maybe it gives you a lot of treasures. Maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe it gives you 2. That's happened. That's happened.
And the thing about Ancient Copper Dragon is, so a lot of people are like, I'm not going to run Dockside in my casual deck because how dare I? That's a CDH card. But if you run Ancient Copper Dragon and he hits a D20, I mean a Nat 20, he gets you more treasures than Dockside did. So what people are doing is they're lying to themselves that Ancient Copper Dragon is okay because it's a gamble and it's not a surefire. But we just said we don't like the Chaos Warp being unreliable.
It also takes the 6 mana to play, and it also takes making impact with a face. Like it takes a lot more to get going than a Dockside does.
It's not a good card. And then it's a not good card that might have some ridiculous fall in your lap payoff, which we're back to protagonist lane where you trip over the rock.
So remember that thing that happens when you play this is the main issue that happens. Remember that thing that you were talking about when it happens and you play a Rishik study and everybody has to think about their turn and then they draw a card and then suddenly their whole turn changes.
When you give somebody 15 extra mana and suddenly they can do everything, so they're thinking about everything instead
Analysis paralysis.
And it didn't change anything they could do on their turn. Like
they could just play it, but now they have to play their cards and target a bunch of things, and then
you should be able to do it faster now, though, because you don't have to think about your mana, and yet that never happens.
And then that never happens, and then especially in a dragon deck.
Yeah.
So that is my issue for the deck.
I get it. I can understand that. All right, that is we are actually overtime on that, but it's been a while.
We're usually an hour and a half, or over 2 hours now.
Yeah, but it was good being able to get an episode of the podcast out. Again, I do appreciate both of y'all having the time to come and do this, and I think we're all going to appreciate having tacos after this.
Yep.
Not
tacos.
me. I can't. I don't have time anymore.
You don't have time anymore?
Nope.
Testicles.
No tacos for me. Have tacos for me.
I will buy extra tacos and eat them in your name.
Thank you.
Now I gotta go wake Saki up.
All right. Bye.
See it. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate you coming around. And I will see you all. Hopefully we'll all see you all next week. But I will see you all in whatever videos are coming out soon.
Yes.